For decades, the FBI has stood as a symbol of justice, power, and integrity, an elite force trusted to uphold the law. But what happens when the very people sworn to uphold the law end up breaking it? Behind the badge, behind the power, some agents have crossed the line, trading honor for greed, secrecy for betrayal. In rare but shocking cases, FBI agents have abused their authority, manipulated investigations, or engaged in criminal activity for personal gain. From leaking classified information to accepting bribes, their actions not only shattered public trust, but also put national security at risk. These aren't just minor slip-ups. These are crimes that led to courtroom trials, guilty verdicts, and prison sentences. When the protectors become perpetrators, the fall from grace is steep and the consequences severe. In today's video, we will be looking at FBI agents who have been convicted and sent to jail. Number 1. Charles McGonigal, once a high-ranking FBI official, saw a dramatic fall from grace that shocked the intelligence and law enforcement communities. Born in 1968, McGonigal rose through the ranks of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, eventually becoming the special agent in charge of the Counterintelligence Division in the FBI's New York field office. In this role, he oversaw sensitive investigations concerning foreign spies and national security threats, including Russian intelligence operations on U.S. soil. Despite his prestigious career, McGonigal's legacy was tarnished by a scandal that highlighted the very vulnerabilities he once vowed to eliminate. In 2023, he was arrested and later convicted for his involvement in a scheme that included working with a sanctioned Russian oligarch, Oleg Deripaska. Prosecutors revealed that McGonigal had accepted payments in exchange for attempting to have U.S. sanctions lifted against Deripaska and for investigating a rival Russian businessman on his behalf. Additionally, McGonigal was charged in a separate case for concealing $225,000 he allegedly received from a former Albanian intelligence officer while still serving in the FBI. These charges represented a profound betrayal of public trust and national security. In 2024, McGonigal pleaded guilty to the charges and was sentenced to over 4 years in federal prison. He began serving his sentence at a medium-security federal facility. McGonigal is currently serving his sentence in federal custody. His imprisonment marks one of the most disgraceful episodes in the history of the FBI, not only because of the crimes committed, but because of the damage done to public trust in the agency. His story serves as a stark reminder that even those tasked with enforcing the law are not above it. A man once entrusted with protecting the nation now sits behind bars for betraying it. Number 2. Robert Hanssen. He was one of the most damaging spies in American history. Born on April 18, 1944 in Chicago, Illinois, he had a strict upbringing and eventually earned degrees in chemistry and business. In 1976, Hanssen joined the FBI, where he worked in counterintelligence, a position that gave him access to highly classified information. To many of his colleagues, he appeared devout and reserved, a religious man who lived a seemingly ordinary suburban life. But beneath the surface, Hanssen harbored a dark secret. Beginning in 1979, Hanssen started passing sensitive information to the Soviet Union and later to Russia, continuing this betrayal for over 2 decades. In exchange for over $1.4 million in cash and diamonds, Hanssen disclosed top-secret documents, revealed the identities of double agents, and compromised major U.S. intelligence operations. His actions led to the deaths of at least 2 Soviet agents who had been working for the U.S., making his espionage particularly devastating. Despite his efforts to conceal his identity, Hanssen's activities eventually raised suspicions. The FBI launched an intense investigation, and in 2001, he was caught in a Virginia park while leaving a package of classified materials for Russian agents at a dead drop site. His arrest shocked the intelligence community and the American public. Hanssen quickly pleaded guilty to 15 counts of espionage and conspiracy to avoid the death penalty. In 2002, he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He was incarcerated at the ADX Florence Supermax prison in Colorado, a facility known for housing some of the most dangerous criminals in the U.S. There, he spent the rest of his life in solitary confinement. Robert Hanssen died in prison on June 5, 2023, at the age of 79. Reports stated he was found unresponsive in his cell. His death marked the end of a life defined by betrayal, a man who, while sworn to protect his country, caused immense damage to its national security. His story remains a chilling reminder of how deep treachery can run, even within the highest ranks of government. Number 3. G. Gordon Liddy. He was a controversial figure in American history, known for his role in the infamous Watergate scandal that rocked the United States in the 1970s. Born on November 30th, 1930 in Brooklyn, New York, Liddy began his career in law enforcement and served as an FBI agent during the 1950s. Known for his intensity and strict adherence to discipline, he quickly rose through the ranks and later transitioned into politics and intelligence work. In the early 1970s, Liddy joined President Richard Nixon's administration and became a central figure in the Committee to Re-elect the President, commonly called CREEP. During this time, he helped orchestrate a series of illegal activities aimed at undermining the Democratic Party, including the notorious break-in at the Democratic National Committee headquarters located in the Watergate complex in Washington, D.C. Liddy was the mastermind behind the operation, which involved illegal wiretapping and burglary. The plan was to gather damaging information on political opponents. However, the operatives were caught during the break-in on June 17, 1972, leading to a massive investigation that would ultimately lead to President Nixon's resignation. In 1973, G. Gordon Liddy was convicted of burglary, conspiracy, and refusing to testify to the Senate committee investigating Watergate. He was sentenced to 20 years in federal prison and fined $40,000. However, he served just over 4 years before his sentence was commuted by President Jimmy Carter in 1977. While in prison, Liddy remained defiant, refusing to implicate others and embracing his reputation as a political martyr. After his release, he reinvented himself as an author, talk show host, and public speaker, often embracing his criminal past with an air of pride. G. Gordon Liddy died on March 30th, 2021, at the age of 90 in Mount Vernon, Virginia. Despite his criminal record, he left behind a complex legacy, a man seen by some as a patriot and by others as a symbol of corruption and abuse of power at the highest levels of government. Number 4. John Joseph Connolly Jr., born on August 1st, 1940, in Boston, Massachusetts, is a former FBI agent whose career became infamous due to his corrupt relationship with notorious Boston mobster James Whitey Bulger. Connolly grew up in South Boston's Old Harbor housing project, where he befriended the Bulger brothers, Billy, who later became a prominent politician, and Whitey, who would become a feared crime boss. After earning degrees from Boston College and Harvard's Kennedy School, Connolly joined the FBI in 1968, eventually returning to Boston in the 1970s. In 1975, Connolly recruited Whitey Bulger and Stephen the Rifleman Flemmi as FBI informants, aiming to dismantle the Italian-American mafia. However, Connolly's relationship with Bulger and Flemmi became corrupt. He accepted bribes and provided them with confidential information, including tips about investigations and informants, allowing them to eliminate rivals and evade law enforcement. Connolly retired from the FBI in 1990. In 1999, Connolly was indicted on federal charges of racketeering, obstruction of justice, and making false statements. He was convicted in 2002 and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Further investigations revealed that Connolly had informed Bulger and Flemmi that businessman John Callahan might implicate them in a murder, leading to Callahan's assassination in 1982. In 2008, Connolly was convicted in Florida State Court of second-degree murder for his role in Callahan's death and sentenced to 40 years in prison. Connolly served his federal sentence before being transferred to Florida to serve his state sentence. In 2014, a Florida appeals court overturned his murder conviction, citing the statute of limitations. However, the full appellate court reinstated the conviction in 2015. In 2021, due to terminal cancer and other health issues, Connolly was granted a conditional medical release from prison. As of now, he remains under supervision until 2047. Number 5. Mark Putnam. He was once a rising star in the FBI, the first agent ever assigned to Pikeville, Kentucky in the 1980s. Young, ambitious, and seemingly committed to justice, Putnam had a promising future in law enforcement. He was married, had children, and was trusted with sensitive investigations involving bank robberies and informants. But behind this clean-cut image was a man leading a double life, one that ended in scandal, conviction, and imprisonment. While working in Pikeville, Putnam recruited Susan Smith, a 27-year-old local woman with a troubled past, to serve as an informant. She provided him with key intelligence on local criminals, particularly those involved in bank robberies. Over time, their professional relationship turned into a sexual affair, one that Putnam would later describe as a mistake that spiraled out of control. When Smith became pregnant and claimed the baby was his, Putnam, fearing the destruction of his career and marriage, made a fatal decision. In June 1989, Putnam strangled Susan Smith to death and disposed of her body in a remote area. For over a year, Smith was listed as a missing person. Putnam continued working with the FBI during this time, maintaining his facade. But guilt and pressure eventually led him to confess. In 1990, he admitted to the murder and led authorities to her remains. Putnam was charged with first-degree manslaughter, not murder, as part of a plea deal. In a shocking turn, the court sentenced him to just 16 years in prison. He served only 10 years before being released in 2000, making him the first FBI agent in U.S. history to be convicted of homicide. After his release, Putnam disappeared from the public eye. He changed his name, relocated, and has lived a quiet life since, reportedly remarrying. As of 2025, he is still alive. Despite serving his sentence, public perception of Putnam remains complex, a man once sworn to uphold the law who committed the ultimate betrayal. His case remains a grim reminder that even those trusted to enforce justice can fall prey to personal demons and abuse their power. The story of Mark Putnam is a dark chapter in FBI history, one that underscores the dangers of unchecked authority, secrecy, and moral compromise. Number 6, Mark Rossini, a former FBI supervisory special agent whose career, once marked by high-level counterterrorism work, ended in scandal following a criminal conviction for unauthorized access to FBI databases. Rossini joined the FBI in 1991 and rose through the ranks to become a liaison to the CIA's Bin Laden Issue Station, an interagency unit focused on tracking Osama bin Laden. In this role, he became aware in early 2000 that 2 al-Qaeda operatives, Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Mithar, had valid U.S. visas. However, he was reportedly prevented by CIA personnel from sharing this information with FBI headquarters. Both men later participated in the 9/11 attacks, a fact that has left Rossini burdened with guilt over the missed opportunity to prevent the tragedy. In 2008, Rossini pleaded guilty to 5 counts of criminally accessing a sensitive FBI database for personal purposes. Between January and July 2000, he conducted over 40 unauthorized searches in the FBI's automated case support system, many related to the federal investigation of Hollywood private investigator Anthony Pellicano. Rossini was not assigned to this case and had no official reason to access these records. He admitted to downloading a confidential FBI report and providing it to a woman with whom he had a close personal relationship, actress Linda Fiorentino, who then passed it to Pellicano's legal team. As part of his plea agreement, Rossini resigned from the FBI in November 2008. In May 2009, he was sentenced to 1 year of probation, 250 hours of community service, and a $5,000 fine. Additionally, he was barred from obtaining a security clearance or employment with federal, state, or local law enforcement without court approval. Following his conviction, Rossini sought to rebuild his life. He became involved with the Youth Rescue Initiative in New Orleans, working on programs to support at-risk youth. He also established a corporate risk management company, MTR Associates, aiming to leverage his investigative experience in the private sector. Rossini's story is a complex one marked by significant contributions to national security efforts and a dramatic fall from grace due to personal misconduct. Number 7, Paul Rico. He was once a respected FBI agent whose career seemed emblematic of justice and law enforcement in mid-20th century America. Born in 1925, rejoined the FBI in 1951, and quickly made a name for himself in Boston's crime-fighting scene. He specialized in organized crime, particularly targeting the Italian-American mafia. But behind the scenes, Rico's methods were less than honorable. His career eventually unraveled into one of the most disgraceful chapters in the FBI's history. Rico played a central role in cultivating informants from the criminal underworld, most notably members of the Winter Hill Gang in Boston. Among them were notorious figures like James Whitey Bulger and Stephen the Rifleman Flemmy. Rico and other agents used these mobsters to gather intelligence on rival gangs, often ignoring their violent crimes in return. In some cases, the FBI's cooperation went much further than passive complicity. It allegedly included helping these criminals eliminate rivals and evade justice. The most damning allegation against Rico involved the 1965 murder of Oklahoma businessman Roger Wheeler. Wheeler was investigating theft and corruption tied to a company called World Jaya Lie, which Bulger and Flemmy had infiltrated. Rico, who had left the FBI in 1975 and later worked as head of security for World Jaya Lie, was accused of tipping off Bulger and Flemmy about Wheeler's investigation. This ultimately led to Wheeler's murder. In 2003, nearly 3 decades after his retirement, Rico was arrested and charged with facilitating Wheeler's killing. The charges shocked many, not only due to the gravity of the crime, but because Rico was nearly 80 years old at the time. The government alleged that Rico had betrayed his badge, assisting known killers in return for information and personal gain. He was extradited to Oklahoma to stand trial for conspiracy to commit murder and other related charges. However, Rico never stood trial. Shortly after his arrest, while being held in custody, he died of natural causes in 2004 in a jail hospital in Tulsa, Oklahoma. His death denied the public a full accounting of his role in the FBI's darkest alliances with organized crime. Paul Rico's story is a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power, blurred moral lines, and the catastrophic consequences when those sworn to uphold the law betray it from within. Number 8, Richard W. Miller. His story is one of the most shocking betrayals in the history of the FBI. Once a trusted counterintelligence agent, Miller became the first FBI agent ever convicted of espionage, shaking the foundation of America's most prestigious law enforcement agency. Born in 1937, Miller joined the FBI in 1964, working out of the Los Angeles field office. By the 1980s, his career was stagnant. Overweight, struggling with debt, and feeling undervalued, Miller was seen by colleagues as eccentric and unremarkable. However, behind this facade, he was brewing a betrayal that would shock the nation. In 1984, Miller became romantically involved with Svetlana Ogorodnikov, a Russian immigrant suspected of being a Soviet agent. Ogorodnikov and her husband, Nikolai, operated as conduits for Soviet intelligence. Desperate for money and recognition, Miller agreed to supply classified FBI documents to the Soviets in exchange for $65,000 in gold and cash, and for the continued affection of Svetlana. The materials he handed over included sensitive national security information related to Soviet defectors and U.S. counterintelligence operations. Miller was arrested in October 1984 after an FBI sting operation exposed his dealings. The case shocked the country. Not only was a federal agent selling secrets to the enemy, but he was also doing so for financial gain and a romantic liaison. He became the first FBI agent in history to be charged with espionage. His first trial in 1985 ended in a hung jury, and a retrial in 1986 resulted in a conviction on multiple counts, including passing class information to a foreign power and bribery. He was sentenced to life in prison, although this was later reduced to 20 years after an appeal. Miller served about 9 years of his sentence before being released in 1994. Upon release, he faded into obscurity, rarely making public appearances and never regaining any position of public trust. His case remains a dark stain on the FBI's record, a sobering reminder that even within elite institutions, human vulnerabilities can open the door to betrayal. Richard Miller's fall from federal agent to convicted spy is a cautionary tale of personal weakness, moral failure, and the devastating cost of putting self-interest above national duty. Number 9. Babak Brumand, a former FBI special agent, was sentenced in February 2023 to 6 years in federal prison for accepting over $150,000 in bribes from a lawyer connected to organized crime. This conviction marked a dramatic fall for an agent once entrusted with national security investigations in the FBI's San Francisco field office. Bruman joined the FBI in 1999 and served until 2018. During his tenure, he handled sensitive assignments, including counterterrorism operations. However, from 2015 to 2018, he engaged in a corrupt relationship with Edgar Sargsyan, a self-styled attorney with ties to Armenian organized crime figures, in exchange for bribes, including cash, a Ducati motorcycle, private jet flights, hotel stays, and escorts. Bruman provided Sargsyan with confidential law enforcement information. He conducted unauthorized searches of FBI databases to inform Sargsyan whether specific individuals were under investigation, thereby helping criminal associates evade detection. To conceal their illicit arrangement, Bruman falsely portrayed Sargsyan as an FBI informant, creating backdated reports to legitimize his database queries. The bribe payments were funneled through Love Bugs, LLC, a lice removal salon business Bruman co-owned with his wife. In October 2022, after an 11-day trial, a federal jury found Bruman guilty of conspiracy, bribery of a public official, and monetary transactions in property derived from unlawful activity. He was acquitted on 2 other counts. Following the verdict, he was taken into custody. At his sentencing, U.S. District Judge Gary Klausner acknowledged Bruman's prior service but emphasized the severity of his betrayal. Prosecutors highlighted that Bruman's actions not only compromised investigations but also undermined public trust in law enforcement. In addition to his prison term, Bruman was ordered to pay a $30,000 fine and forfeit $132,309 linked to his criminal conduct. Bruman's case underscores the critical importance of integrity within law enforcement agencies and serves as a cautionary tale about the consequences of violating public trust. Number 10. Mark Felt, once a towering figure in the Federal Bureau of Investigation, is best known not only for his law enforcement career, but also for his complex legacy of secrecy, betrayal, and ultimate criminal conviction. Born in 1913 in Idaho, Felt joined the FBI in 1942 and rose through the ranks, eventually becoming Associate Director, the second highest position in the Bureau. While history would remember him as the mysterious Deep Throat, the whistleblower who helped expose the Watergate scandal, Felt's career also took a darker turn when he violated the very laws he was sworn to uphold. In the 1970s, during the height of domestic unrest in the United States, the FBI initiated a covert campaign against radical groups such as the Weather Underground. As part of this crackdown, Felt authorized illegal black bag jobs, warrantless break-ins, targeting the homes of suspects and their families. These clandestine operations were conducted without judicial oversight and were blatant violations of constitutional rights. Felt's role in these unauthorized break-ins came under scrutiny years later when the government began reevaluating abuses of power within the FBI. In 1978, Felt was indicted for conspiring to violate citizens' Fourth Amendment rights through these illegal activities. His trial in 1980 revealed a chilling narrative of federal overreach and the justification of unlawful conduct in the name of national security. Despite pleas from high-profile supporters, including former presidents and FBI colleagues, Mark Felt was convicted of conspiracy to violate civil rights. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison, though the sentence was later suspended. He never served jail time, but the conviction stood as a rare example of a high-ranking law enforcement officer being held accountable. In a dramatic twist, President Ronald Reagan pardoned Felt in 1981, arguing that his actions were taken in the interest of national security and deserved clemency. The pardon reignited debates about the balance between civil liberties and government power, debates that persist to this day. Mark Felt's legacy remains deeply contradictory. While he was later revealed in 2005 as the legendary Watergate source who helped bring down President Nixon, his own criminal conviction casts a long shadow over his reputation. He died in 2008, leaving behind a legacy that forces Americans to grapple with questions of secrecy, accountability, and the rule of law. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.